In this video, I'm going to talk about how to approach a thesis in a free response question 2 on the AP test, and how to write a brief but effective introduction. As you know from the previous videos, my thesis is going to have something to do with social class and how it can affect the relationships between two people. In my thesis, I'm going to want to mention the author, whose name is Thomas Hardy, and I'm going to want, obviously, to discuss my main idea about social class once I figure that out, but I'm also going to want to mention the techniques I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about tone in this. I'm going to talk about diction. I'm going to talk about physical details, and I'm going to talk about characterization. Those are going to be the three I focus on, because those are the three that stuck out to me the most. So your thesis has to be something that is arguable. In other words, someone who reads the same passage should be able to disagree with it. If it's something so obvious that no one would disagree, then it's not really going to be much of a thesis. It's not going to be very interesting. So it's got to be something arguable. And it doesn't have to be fully developed in your introduction, because according to the AP people, your thesis can be anywhere. Even in the conclusion, if you could not write a thesis until the conclusion. Now, I don't think that would make for a very good essay, because I think if you don't establish what you're arguing at the beginning of the essay, then through all your evidence and everything that you write, the reader's going to be trying to figure out what your point is. So you're going to want some kind of point in your introduction. But that point can develop, and you can have a much stronger restatement of thesis at the end, a more specific, more developed restatement of thesis toward the end. That makes sense. You have to write this thing in 45 minutes. Sometimes as you write, you will understand your own thesis better as you're providing evidence, and your thesis will develop and become sharper and more specific. But you've got to have something in the introduction that you're arguing. So let me see what I can come up with real quick. Okay, so I wrote this. It's not perfect, but I don't have time to write a perfect thesis. It's just got to be something that works and that I can work with. So I wrote, in The Mayor of Casterbridge, Thomas Hardy uses characterization, diction, and physical details to illustrate how social class can drive a wedge between people who would otherwise be closely tied. I feel okay about it. It's not the most perceptive thing in the world. I think most people who read the passage would probably get that idea. But if I can get to something by the end that's more developed and specific, then I'll be okay. And after writing that, I've decided that I am going to go with this version. I'm just going to go with the organized chunks, because I want to follow the progression of the relationship as it happened in the passage. That makes the most sense to me. This could work, but my brain works best like this. So that's what I'm going to do. So now let's talk the introduction. The introduction should be 2 to 3 sentences tops. You get in, you get out. And one of those sentences, the last one, will be your thesis. So you've already gotten one written. So now you just need to hook them somehow. So you got to hook them by giving them something with depth in the beginning. Some philosophical statement that leads to your thesis. So one aspect of my thesis that I was thinking about while I was writing it was that social class is not even a real thing. It's this socially constructed thing. It's not a natural part of a human. Nobody's born with a genetic disposition to be one social class or the other. It's completely artificial. And that could lead to my thesis. So let me see if I can come up with something on that. Okay, so I wrote, social class, despite being a completely artificial, unnatural phenomenon, affects each one of us every day and can actually determine our relationships. Now that seems to lead right into my thesis. So if I add my thesis, I've got my introduction. I feel like that's an interesting enough idea to start out with, and it leads right into my thesis. And I don't really have time to do anything more, so I'm going off to my body paragraphs. But that'll be in the next video. Midem and out.